Hi there, hope you are doing all right and welcome to this channel. This channel is mostly about the music production I do and the gear I use to create the tracks around here. But occasionally I do some computer related stuff and this is one of those times. So my wife has a friend. Her friend has a 10-year-old boy and he really wants a gaming PC. Their parents asked me if I could help them build this gaming PC and I said, of course. If we can get more people using PCs and self-built PCs, that's just thumbs up. And thumbs up if you like that idea as well. But the problem here is when I talk to the parents, the budget is not really that high. He needs everything. He needs a display, he needs a keyboard, the actual PC, he needs Wi-Fi card, you know, he needs everything. And with the budget I was presented, his life savings, I couldn't consciously buy new parts and give that to him and say, hey, here you have a gaming PC. The best I could do, I think, was buy new parts with display and everything and giving him a iGPU. Although I think that should work for playing maybe Fortnite or something, but if he wants to move up to some more AAA titles, and I kind of see that he likes Battlefront and he likes some of those games, I can't justify buying those parts, I think. So I said to his parents we could try to go the used route instead. I can try to find a system for him or maybe try to build a system for him as cheap as possible. It won't obviously be like a new machine, but he will get a lot more performance out of his money if we go that way. And the parents said, yes, of course you can do that if you want. So this is what this video is going to be about. So where do we begin? Well, we need something to base a computer out of. There are many ways of doing this. You can go to, for you folks in the United States, you have something called Craigslist. Here in Norway we have something called something else. You can go through there and see if you can find a deal of a used PC there. And if you are like me, if you work in IT, it can also help. One of the days I was walking around in the corridor where I work and I saw a few piles of cardboard boxes and I saw a few cases standing there on the floor with the side panels off and the hard drives was pulled out. I asked the guy sitting next to these if these computers was something he was going to throw away or sell or something. It was old computers from old customers. He just had removed the hard drive and he was going to throw them away. So I thought, well, why can't we just see what it is and try to build a PC out of those computers? I told him that I was going to build a PC for this 10-year-old guy and he said, yeah, just take them. And so I have the cases here and I thought we could go through them and see what kind of hardware it's inside. Hopefully the hardware is good enough to base a gaming PC on. The only thing I think we need to do is to get a GPU. But I haven't looked inside the computers yet, so I don't know what kind of hardware we are talking about. But I thought I could bring you along for the ride. I will just demount the camera for here and we can crack the cases open and see what kind of hardware we'll find in these cases. So come along. So here we have the two computers I hope we can use to make a decent enough gaming PC. We have one HP model here. It's an HP Prodesk. According to the sticker, it looks like it's an Intel i5 CPU in this one. So let's see if we can find what kind of hardware we have in this computer. So we just take the side panel off. So this is what's inside. We have dust and everything here. As I said to you, I've literally just opened it up and we see it's HP proprietary motherboard here. As you can see on the power connectors here, you don't have the usual 24-pin ATX power connector. We have some memory here. You can see, try and see how much memory we have. Can take it out. 4 gigabytes of, it looks like DDR3 memory. Let's see if we can get this CPU out. I think we have to take the PC and lay it flat. Let's try again. Take the cooler off and see what we find. If we find a good CPU. Okay, I think it's loose. Let's just unplug the fan connector, CPU fan. Take the cooler off. So here is the thermal. I think we have to, of course you have to replace the thermal paste here, and here we have the CPU with a lot of dust around it. We can take a few drops of this to try to remove the thermal paste. So what do we find in this PC? Well, we find an i5-4590 CPU. So taking a look at Intel's website, this is a 4th generation Intel Core i5 CPU. It launched in 2014 and it's based on the 22 nanometer process. The base frequency is 3 GHz and it will boost up to 3.7 GHz. TDP is 65 watts, integrated graphics. So I think we can use this CPU for gaming, but we have another PC to take a look at. We haven't looked at the hardware in this one yet. And I noticed another thing when I was looking down here on the motherboard. It looks like this PC Express slot supports 16x GPUs, but because we don't have a standard power supply in this computer, we will be forced to use a GPU without extra power. We can only use the power delivered by this PC Express slot. If we don't do any kind of Frankenstein thing and use a SATA to PCI Express connector, that is also possible, of course. I could probably do that. But when we have another computer to take a look at and see what kind of hardware we have in this one. So I think this CPU can be used, and we have 4 GB of memory. That will be possible to build a gaming PC, but I hope we can find 8 GB of memory. So let's crack up the next PC and see what's inside of that one. Okay, so here we have the other PC. This is also probably an Intel i5 CPU. It looks like that on the sticker at least. Let's just have taken off the screws on the side panel here, so just crack it up here. Okay, this looks more like a kind of normal PC. Yeah, this is a blast from the past. Shift-Tech power supply, Intel stock cooler. So this looks more like a normal motherboard, not something you will get from HP. I'm curious to see what kind of CPU this one has. See if I can open this with one hand. Okay, let's unplug the CPU fan here and remove the cooler and see what hides beneath this cooler. And again, we have to remove some thermal paste. Let's see if we can find those CPU details. Okay, so we have actually the i5-2500K CPU here. Yeah, so the i5 in this motherboard, it's a legendary CPU, and it's a K version, so it can be overclocked as well. Obviously, with this type of cooler and this thermal paste application, you can't really overclock it that much. But yeah, I think maybe we can base something out of this. The 4590S CPU I found in the other system. This is a little bit newer CPU. It has the 22 nanometer process. It's the same turbo frequency as the 2500K, but the base frequency is a little bit lower. We can take a look at the memory in this system, see what kind of memory. This looks like some kind of... So let's see if we can pop this one out and see what we have here. AMD memory, okay, never seen that before. AMD Entertainment Edition. So we have 4 GB of DDR3 memory built by Patriot. And we have 4 GB of memory here as well. So yeah, this is interesting, but I think we have enough parts so that we can build a gaming PC for this guy. I think we need some coffee after that. So that was interesting. On the one side we have an i5 4590S CPU. It's made in 2014 and it's based on the 22 nanometer process. The base frequency is 3 GHz and it boosts up to 3.7. It has integrated HD graphics 4600 and it's the CPU in this HP PC, which has a proprietary motherboard. On the other side here we have the i5 2500K. This is a legendary gaming CPU. A lot of people use this. This CPU, however, is a little bit older than the 4590S. And it's also based on the 32 nanometer process, but it's a K CPU, so this CPU can be overclocked, and the base frequency on the 2500K is 3.3 GHz, and again the turbo boost is 3.7 GHz. So we have a few things to talk about. When we talk about the gaming PC, there are a few things that are important, and there are a few things that are more important than others for gaming performance. The first thing is of course the GPU. The GPU is what decides how fast the graphic is going to be on the PC. And after that we have the CPU. The CPU needs to handle the power the GPU delivers. And in this case, I think the i5 2500K will be able to handle 1080p gaming if I pair it with a good enough GPU for that. Another thing I would like to try is that I see that this is a Asus motherboard. I think this motherboard also has some included overclocking capabilities. The 2500K CPU was a CPU that was very easy to overclock. Obviously, if we want to overclock it, we have to replace the CPU cooler, and we also have to test the system and see if it even works, and I haven't done that yet. So I hope this system works, and I think we can build something out of it. But before we even decide what parts we are going to buy for this system, we need to test it and see if it really works. I haven't even plugged it in, so I think I'm going to do that now. And I'm just going to use this old GTX 260 GPU and place it inside this computer and see if it boots. And maybe try installing Windows and see if everything is working all right. And if it does, then we can try to think about upgrading this PC with maybe a better CPU cooler, better GPU, and yeah, see if we can get it 1080p gaming worthy. So doing this using only one hand is not something I really recommend, but if you have a YouTube channel, I guess you have to try to make the best of it. Let's take off the brackets down here so we can fit the GPU, the test GPU I'm going to try. So here it is. I know the GPU is a little bit dusty. It's I plan to clean all of this when we are done. Okay, as I said, I am going to use this GTX 260 GPU and just place it inside here and see if it works. But this computer doesn't have any PCI Express power, so I have to use this cable here. It goes from SATA to PCI Express. So we just plug the PCI Express inside here and in the GPU, and then plug this end into the SATA connector here. So I'm going to do that and put the camera down and place everything inside here. Okay, so now the GPU is connected here. I'm using this power cable to the SATA connector. We still have to insert the CPU cooler. I have cleaned it off there, but we need to apply some new thermal paste. I'm just using the MX2. So I saw on Reddit that this is the best way to apply thermal paste in a cross. So doing it this way will spread the thermal paste in the most even way. And we have to put the CPU cooler back on here, and the Intel stock one. I hope we can replace it with something else. But this have to do for now, so we can test the system. Looks like it's down there. Just have to connect the CPU fan power cable. And yeah, I think we can plug it in, boot it up, and see if we can get inside the BIOS. Okay, so I found a display I can use, found some power cables. So let's see if this thing starts up. Okay, the fan is spinning. Okay, so let's see if we can get inside the BIOS. So here we have the BIOS. It says we have an Intel Core i5 2500K running at 3.3 gigahertz. And let's just go to advanced mode. So this is a motherboard where you can do some more tweaks on the CPU. You can overclock it. Obviously you can't overclock it with this CPU cooler. But I think this is looking pretty good. We have a lot of settings here. I can also try to see if I can use the other memory stick there also, so he gets 8 gigabytes of memory. I think I'm going to install Windows on this one now and boot it up and see if we can get it working. I don't really want to use the GTX 260 GPU, but I know the budget is low, and we'll see what happens. This looks promising. Let's install Windows and come back then. Okay, I just wanted to mention one thing. I see here on this motherboard the BIOS version is 3604, and I went to the Asus website. I can see that the BIOS was released in 2012, and I see that there are 5 new versions since the one installed on this motherboard. So I'm going to update the BIOS on this motherboard before I'm installing Windows. On an old system like this, and if I'm going to install a new GPU, I think it could be wise to at least try to have the newest BIOS available and to get the system as stable as possible. I can show you how to update the BIOS on this PC, because this is a build log. I want you to come along for the ride. This is not scripted in any way, so I'm just talking a lot, but that's how things are. Updating the BIOS. Okay, so I went to the Asus website. I searched for the motherboard name. So I took an USB drive here, downloaded the BIOS file here, plugged it in my PC over here. I unzipped the file, put it on the USB stick, and now we are on the PC here. We go into the BIOS and go into the advanced mode, and we go over to Tool here. We go to Asus Easy Flash to Utility, and hopefully this works. So FS1, we can see that we have the BIOS file there. Just press tab, go down, press enter, and it asks if you want to read this file. Yes, we want to read that file. And do you really want to update the BIOS? Yes, go. And now you can see that it is processing, if this camera can focus. And I think we can speed this up a little bit. The update successfully, system will be reset. Press OK. When the BIOS update is finished, you have to go into the BIOS again. Now we can see there that the BIOS version is 3904. So we have the newest available BIOS for this system. And we go to exit on the top there, and we select load optimized defaults. We select yes, save changes and reset. So the BIOS is now on default settings, and you should always load optimized defaults up after updating the BIOS. And now I'm just going to install Windows and see if we can get this working. Apparently we can't get the focus working. So I've been able to install Windows 10 here and updated it to the newest version with all of the new updates. It seems like the 2500K is working. It's a Sandy Bridge CPU here. I was also able to use the other memory stick here, so I get 8 gigabytes of memory in this system, and it's running in dual channel. I haven't done any overclocking yet. I just wanted to see what the temperatures was in idle. The only thing I did here is that I set the power schedule to high performance, so it always stays at 3.3 gigahertz. And it looks like the power here is around 40 degrees Celsius, around 41 in idling. And I don't think there is a lot headroom for overclocking in this case, but maybe a little bit. I also tried installing a Unigene Heaven benchmark and just run that on the 260 GPU. This GPU is not something I'm going to recommend this guy to use, but I just installed it so I could get something booted up. I just wanted to try it out and see that it works. It's around 15 FPS and the resolution is 1680 by 1050. And I want this system to be able to game in 1080p, so we really have to replace the GPU here, and I have to recommend that to the people I'm building this PC for. But this is just a test to see that if everything is working and if it's not crashing and at least works. I think we are ready for the next part, and that is finding new parts here, finding a new GPU and some other things. And let's take a little talk about that. So Windows is installed and the system is up and running, but I think I need to replace some parts in this system. I would like to overclock the 2500K CPU, and if I want to do that I can't use the Intel stock cooler, at least not for the type of overclock I am thinking about. I don't want to overclock it that much because I'm not going to supervise this system that much, so it has to be a stable 24/7 overclock. So I think we can't go that much higher than maybe 4 gigahertz, maybe something like that, but it will probably give it a little boost in the games. As for power supply, I think we also should replace the power supply. The power supply in this PC is a Chieftek 350 watts power supply, and I would like him to get something else, maybe a 500 watt with some PCI Express connectors. As for graphics card, I am thinking of maybe getting a GTX 1660 Super in addition with a 1080p display, and I think that will be a good combination of GPU and CPU for this type of PC. Again, my goal here is to get it as cheap as possible without draining all of his life savings, but I also don't want it to be really bad in gaming performance, so there's a thin line to walk there. If you have any suggestions or comments, you're also welcome to type them down there below, but keep it civil and we can have a discussion here. So stay tuned for the next part when we are going to upgrade this system to make it gaming worthy. That will be the next video. To get notified about the next video, make sure you are subscribed to this channel, and if you like content like this, you're also welcome to like the video and maybe share it with others. If you are interested in my music, you can also check the links below for links to my Spotify page and things like that. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next part. Bye bye.